Hi there, it's time for me to do one of my graphic novel roundups. I'm going to look at three books today, all of them very different. The first of these is The Park by Oscar Zarate. I've probably mispronounced that, let's stick with Oscar. The book is published by Self-Made Hero and it's set in a London park, Hampstead Heath, to anyone who's spent any time there. And it has two men at the centre, two men who clash, and that single event sets off a chain of events afterwards, which cause all sorts of conflict. And both of these men who clash are single parents, and so the book looks at their relationship with their children, daughter and son, respectively. And it's also quite an ambitious book because not only does it look at just the relationships between these two men and daughters, but also their wider relationships, things like ecological campaigning, the comedy of Laurel and Hardy, all sorts of disparate things. Oscar works in watercolour, and that means you get that wonderful light in the artwork. It's set on a summer's day, so you get that wonderful bright colour of a summer's day in a London park. But also, with one of the characters being a keen runner, you get that wonderful light that you see at dawn or at dusk. And he makes really good use of the different colour washes that you can see in a London park. If there's a quibble, it is that a book set in a great big sprawling city like London has few too many coincidences in it for my liking in order to tie together the plot and keep it sort of tight set of characters. But that's a small thing. There's lots of stuff to enjoy in this book. For me, as somebody who used to live in London but who now doesn't, it was nice to spend some time there again. But of course, equally nice to be able to leave it at the end of the day too. Moving on to the Encyclopedia of Early Earth by Isabel Greenberg. Greenberg won the Cape Observer Short Story Award a couple of years ago with a story called Love in a Very Cold Climate, and that story is the prologue to the rest of this book. She's very keen to point out on the back that this is not an encyclopedia, it is a work of fiction, and it's in fact a work of many fictions. It's lots of different stories. It draws on the sort of storytelling traditions or myths of many countries in the Northern Hemisphere, and she is able to spin out several different fables and stories from the beginnings of that initial story, Love in a Very Cold Climate. It's filled with this humour, which is sometimes winsome, sometimes a bit sentimental, sometimes very undercutting and dry, but it means that it's a very enjoyable read. And in fact, it has that quality which makes me think that it would appeal to possibly even younger readers as well. I remember as a kid reading the sort of Greek myths and legends and all that sort of stuff, and it has the enjoyment of those stories, but with a real modern sensibility to it and a real nice humour to it. So again, a very enjoyable book, very easy to work your way through, and some lovely artwork, very contrasty, I would call it, almost like woodcut artwork in places, but a very interesting start for Greenberg. Finally, we move on to this gigantic book, Lighter Than My Shadow by Katie Green. This is actually a graphic memoir. I'm a big fan of graphic memoirs if they are good. What I mean by that is, with all graphic work, I'm always interested to know why it's in a graphic form rather than in the written form. Katie Green's memoir is about her struggle with eating disorders, anorexia, and not so much bulimia, but more binge eating. And why it's fascinating to look at in a graphic perspective, of course, is because looking at an eating disorder with a graphic approach allows you to really get inside the head of somebody who is suffering from those diseases, because, of course, they are suffering from a psychological condition, which means that they see their body in a very different way to the way everybody else sees it. And Katie Green does this brilliant thing where she's able to show exactly what it was like when she looked in a mirror. Her eyes would focus on the part of her body which she felt was fat, and that was all she could see in the mirror. So in the panels in the book, you see the mirror, and all you can see is a gigantic close-up of the gigantic belly that she thinks that she has, which of course is nothing. There are some very clever graphic touches throughout the book, which I think really illuminate what anorexia feels like to the sufferer. Something very similar happened with a book called Epileptic by David B., French artist, and he was able to illustrate in that book what epilepsy felt like. And I still hold that book up as one of the most perfect examples of a way that graphic work can do something that the written work can't. Katie Green does something very similar with this book. I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's well worth looking at, especially for anybody who knows somebody or would like to know more about eating disorders, but also for anybody looking to see what graphic work can achieve and why it deserves its place amongst the other types of writing. That is available from Jonathan Cape, as is Greenberg's book. As I said, Oscar's The Park is available from Self-Made Hero. That's 3 books. That's me finished. See you again soon.